Have you ever noticed yourself listening not to a man's words, but to the silence between them, the hesitation that trembles more honestly than any vow? He says he loves you, and somewhere beneath your ribs, a quieter wisdom answers. Wait, that whisper is not paranoia or a failure of trust. It is the soul's hunger for what is real. It is the fatigue of masks and memorized phrases, the refusal to be consoled by pretty language when something deeper stays unlit. Carl Jung taught that truth rarely lives on the surface where the conscious mind rehearses its lines. It slips under speech and hides in the shadow, speaking in images, instincts, and involuntary movements. If you want to hear that truth, watch the hands. A man's hands are the seismograph of his inner weather, recording tremors the mind cannot control. While his persona smiles and his reason arranges excuses, his hands keep writing the story his unconscious cannot help but tell. Think of the hands as the soul's tools, carving its signature into the everyday. They can create or destroy, shield or threaten, caress or withhold. They reach out when words retreat, flinch when the heart is afraid, linger when love is present and safe. Learn to read this silent alphabet and whole rooms of hidden feeling open, not a parlor trick, not palmistry, but depth psychology made practical, the art of seeing what the unconscious confesses despite itself. You do not need charts or jargon. You need attention. You need patience. You need the courage to believe what you perceive, even when it contradicts what you are told. Begin with giving hands. We are trained to measure love by the gift. Jung would ask us to study the giving. He hands you a coffee, a book, your phone. Does he place it carefully on the table in front of you? A clean transfer without contact, as if fulfilling a function. There is nothing cruel in that gesture. Yet there is distance. Here is your item. Here is the end of my duty. The animus, his disciplined, task-focused principle is at the wheel. You are acknowledged, not encountered. Now imagine the same exchange. Different music. His fingers find yours for the briefest instant as the object passes between you. His gaze may even be elsewhere, but the hand remembers you. He is not merely relinquishing an item, he is offering it. The gesture has the texture of ritual, a small bridge laid between islands, logic and feeling moving together. That is the anima alive in him, the inner principle of relations softening efficiency into connection. Even in conflict, the unconscious will leak its priority. The hand that reaches, however briefly, is voting for us over the quarrel. When he pays for dinner and quietly covers your hand with his afterward, the money becomes a medium rather than a message. The deed says we, not I. Conversely, a stiff wrist, a brusque placement, a vanishing of contact as if touch might burn. These are not minor quirks. They are signals that giving is enacted without self-giving, that the body is near while the psyche keeps its distance. Next, attend to resting hands, the way they behave when no performance is demanded. Truth thrives in unguarded minutes, in the car, as conversation thins and the road hums its steady note. Where does his free hand go of its own accord? To the gear shift, to his phone, to a restless tap that never settles, or to your knee, your fingers, the space of calm you occupy together. A hand that finds you without fanfare is a homing instinct. It betrays affiliation beneath intention. Jung would call it a gesture of the self, that inner center around which a life coheres with you. Things make sense, with you. The system returns to ground. Restless fidgeting tells another story. Drumming, scrolling, pocketed hands that disappear from view. These are moves of avoidance, small fortifications against the silence where intimacy asks to be met. They do not prove deceit, but they reveal discomfort with closeness. The shadow those disowned feelings rustles behind the screen. Crossed arms, rigid fingers, a jaw that sets the body as holding itself in, as if tenderness or irritation. Either one must not be allowed to spill, by contrast. The relaxed hand resting open beside yours, the unremarkable brush that feels as natural as breath. These are the ordinary miracles of trust. They say, without trying, I do not have to manage myself around you. I can simply be. What matters in all of this is not to collect accusations, but to gather clarity. Hands do not lie because they are too busy doing. They answer questions you may be tired of asking aloud. Do you see me, or only your role beside me? Do you want contact, or only compliance? Will you let the relationship change you, or keep it as an accessory to the life you already decided to live? When words promise one thing and gestures move in another direction, follow the movement. It is not cruel to believe what you witness. It is faithful to reality. If love is a house, hands are the contractors, building or neglecting it day by day. You do not need a speech to know which it is. You need to watch what the hands choose when the mouth is quiet. Conflict strips away disguises. It is in the heat of argument, when anger tightens the chest and words cut sharper than intended, that the hands tell their loudest truths. The face can shout or sneer, but the hands clenched, pointed, or open reveal what lies beneath the noise. Watch them closely. A fist, even one never raised, signals regression into a primal state. It is the body's old preparation for defense or attack. The limbic system eclipsing the adult self. Jung would have called this the shadow at work, the raw, unintegrated forces of fear and rage claiming temporary rule. Such a gesture does not guarantee violence, but it does betray immaturity, the inability to let emotion move through without being consumed by it. This is a man still learning how to carry his storms without drowning in them. Sometimes the fists stay unclenched, yet the hands become weapons nonetheless. A finger jabs like a blade, or the palm slices air as though cutting you down. These are not defensive movements. They are acts of conquest, unconscious attempts to dominate space and spirit. The gesture says, "I win, you lose." It is not the motion of a partner, but of a prosecutor. A relationship treated as trial becomes a battleground where intimacy cannot survive. When hands accuse instead of console, the deeper aim is not understanding but victory, and the cost of that victory is connection itself. And then there are rarer hands, the ones that remain open even when the heart is ablaze. A palm turned upward in the middle of conflict is not weakness, it is astonishing strength. It says, "I am furious, but I am not closing to you. I am willing to hurt, but I am unwilling to sever." This openness in the storm is a confession of trust. I would rather risk my vulnerability than weaponize my body against you. Jung would recognize in it the integrated shadow, the man who has befriended his anger enough to avoid being ruled by it. He can let it flare without letting it fracture the bond. Sometimes such a hand will even reach for yours in the quarrel, not to silence or restrain, but to insist gently, "Stop. This matters more than the fight." Few gestures are more sacred than this, an unconscious plea that says, "Let us not destroy what we built." Such a man may raise his voice, but he does not raise barriers. He is strong enough to guard the relationship even against himself. Yet it is not only in quarrels or silences that hands disclose their truth. They reveal it in public too. When masks slip in subtler ways, crowds test instinct, they awaken archetypes. How does he walk beside you on a crowded street if he strides ahead, leaving you to weave through bodies alone? He may be announcing unconsciously that his world is his own and you are left to follow. If he stays at your side but never shields, he treats you as equal, though not necessarily as beloved. But if his hand rests lightly on your lower back, guiding, not gripping, the language is different. That touch, one of the oldest protective gestures, whispers assurance you are safe. "I am here." It is not sexual possession, not ownership, but guardianship. Jung would call it the awakening of the protector archetype, the masculine instinct not to dominate but to shield, to offer strength as sanctuary. It is a simple palm, yet speaks of reverence, of valuing you not as property but as treasure entrusted to his care. The same hand may show itself in subtler ways under the table at a gathering. When a cruel remark stings, his fingers find yours and press. No scene, no defense shouted, just a silent alliance. "I am with you. I hear. I stand beside you." Such gestures weave intimacy thicker than words. They form a shield not of muscle but of solidarity, turning the two of you into a quiet front against the world. On the other hand, notice when public hands grip too tightly, when the hold on your hip becomes a clamp, or the pull into his side feels less protective than possessive. That is not care, but insecurity, the shadow disguising itself as strength. Such hands say, "You are my proof, my trophy, my shield against my own doubt." They do not protect, they advertise. They do not build a shelter, they build a cage. The measure of love in public is never how visible it makes you, but how safe it makes you feel. The truest hands in crowds are often the quietest ones, the palm that clears a path, the fingers that linger gently, the unobtrusive gestures of safety that let you move through the world without fear. A man who loves with such hands is not shouting ownership. He is whispering partnership. He knows his strength is not for display, but for devotion. Everyday acts, every public moment, every argument, all of it funnels back to a single truth: words can lie, but hands cannot. They betray what a man values, what he fears, where his loyalty lives. They reveal whether his energy flows toward you or away, whether he builds walls or bridges. The soul does not hide there. It is carved plainly into the gestures that seem smallest of all. To read them is not to become suspicious, but to become awake. It is to know without pleading, to see without demanding. It is to stand in reality rather than shadow. Listening is an art, but true listening rarely happens only with the ears. The whole body participates. And the hands, restless or still, open or closed, often reveal more about attention than nods or murmured affirmations ever could. Imagine sharing something dear to you, a story charged with emotion. He sits across from you, his face polite, his smile in place. But look at his hands. If they rest calmly on the table, if one supports his chin while his body leans toward you, there is presence in that posture. His hands are saying, "I am here with you," absorbing every word. Jung might call this synchronicity a subtle alignment of unconscious energies where both partners vibrate on the same frequency. His hands confirm his mind's interest, creating a space where you can feel seen without fear of judgment. Now shift the picture. You speak, but his fingers drum impatient rhythms, or they tap at a phone, fiddle with a pen, stroke an earlobe absent-mindedly. His mouth may still shape the phrases of attention. "Yes, I see." "Go on," yet the hands betray boredom, restlessness, disengagement. They whisper a truth the lips conceal. "Hurry up. I am elsewhere." The conversation becomes a duty performed rather than a communion shared. The unconscious is already gone. The bridge collapsing though words pretend to maintain it. The same is true when his hands are clenched or hidden in pockets. Concealment here is not merely physical, it is emotional. What he withholds in gesture is often what he withholds in intimacy. Sometimes, though, the signals are subtler. You tell a story that stirs something in him, and he begins to rub his shoulder or trace his forearm with absent fingers. He is not bored. He is unsettled. The narrative has touched an unhealed place within him, perhaps brushed against his shadow, awakening insecurities or long-suppressed memories. The self-soothing gesture is not dismissal, but confession. It says, "What you have evoked is difficult for me, yet I remain present, here." The meaning is not in the touch itself, but in what follows. Does he close, change the subject, escape into distraction? Or does he stay, uncomfortable but engaged, allowing your words to keep echoing even in the chambers of his own pain? His hands show whether he runs from intimacy or meets it, however tremblingly. The most profound gesture of listening requires no speech at all. You speak of something that hurts, something raw, and instead of filling the air with commentary, he simply covers your hand with his, a single act, wordless. Yet it carries the weight of empathy no vocabulary can match. It declares, "I cannot remove your suffering, but I can stand inside it with you." That is listening not with ears but with soul. A man whose hands offer such presence is not just attending to the facts of your story. He is carrying its feeling, allowing himself to be changed by it. In that moment, you are not merely speaking, you are communing. The hands become the bridge, and through it flows compassion as ancient as love itself. But hands speak of love not only in how they listen, but in how they explore. Exploration here is not erotic conquest, not bedroom passion, but curiosity in its purest form. You sit together quietly, perhaps watching a film, perhaps discussing nothing significant. His hand holds yours, and instead of keeping still, his fingers begin their own slow pilgrimage. They trace the ridges of your palm, Follow the shape of your knuckles. Linger over the curve of each finger as though memorizing them. It is not calculated, not even conscious. It is fascination spilling out through skin. Jung would see in this the anima active, his inner feminine principle of sensitivity and wonder. He is not saying, "I desire you." He is saying, "You amaze me." To him, your hand is not merely flesh. It is a living map of your uniqueness. Each line is a story, each scar a history, and he wants to learn them all. Even small gestures carry this meaning. When he brushes hair from your face, does his hand dart quickly, mechanically, as though tidying a detail? Or does it linger, grazing your temple, memorizing the warmth of your skin and that extra heartbeat before withdrawing? That pause, that softness, says more than declarations shouted. It is a confession of tenderness breaking through ordinary motion. In contrast, notice the man whose touches repeat like a ritual gone stale, the routine peck, the standard hug, the obligatory hand on your shoulder. His hands have ceased to wonder. They no longer rediscover you. They perform gestures emptied of discovery. In such moments, the unconscious has gone silent, and love has congealed into habit. A man who truly loves never stops exploring. His hands will seek new paths, new textures, new details, not because he must, but because he cannot help it. To him, you are not a page already read, but a universe expanding endlessly. He will trace the faint scar on your arm, not out of pity, but out of reverence. He will stroke the back of your fingers as though each carried a secret waiting to be learned. These are the hands that love deeply. They do not handle a body, they honor a soul. To be touched in this way is to be told without words, "You are not ordinary to me. You are wonder itself." Creation, too, has its language. And in love, it often speaks through hands. Words may promise devotion, but when shelves sag, when meals must be made, when daily life calls for action, it is the hands that step forward to testify. The way a man works with matter on your behalf reveals whether his affection is weightless or embodied. Imagine the broken hinge, the stubborn computer, the dinner table waiting to be filled. One man shrugs and calls for a professional, another curses, fumbles, resents the inconvenience. His hands betray obligation rather than offering. But then there is the man who rolls up his sleeves and begins, perhaps without great skill, yet with patience. His hands labor not because they must, but because they long to translate care into form. Jung would say, this is the archetype of the craftsman, the instinct to bring order out of chaos, to anchor love in the tangible. Each nail hammered, each vegetable chopped, each dish stirred becomes a meditation. A wordless message: your world matters to me. Let me make it steadier. The kitchen is a stage where this devotion plays out most clearly. A man who cooks for you is not only feeding your body. Watch his hands as they chop, stir, plate the food. Are they hurried and anxious, resenting the task? Or are they deliberate, attentive, even joyful in the rhythm of care? In the latter lies something deeper, a willingness to give not only nourishment, but himself. To infuse the simplest meal with presence. A hand that stirs soup with quiet dignity is saying, I want your life to be lighter because I exist in it. Contrast this with the man who avoids such gestures entirely, who would rather pay someone else, delegate, outsource care. There is nothing wrong with generosity expressed through money, but it lacks intimacy. Money is universal, impersonal. Hands are singular. To do something with one's own hands is to sign it with the soul. This is why the most lasting love often looks ordinary from the outside. The fixed shelf, the assembled chair, the small meal after a long day. These are not grand gestures, yet they are archetypal ones. They echo back through time when protection and provision were survival itself. When hands meant safety or danger, devotion or neglect. Love that cannot incarnate into the physical realm, into the mended, the prepared, the created remains untested, hovering in abstraction. But when hands shape matter for you, even in small ways, love ceases to be idea and becomes substance. It lives in wood and fabric, in soup and stone. It becomes earthbound and real. And perhaps this is the secret woven through all these observations. Hands are the diary of the unconscious, writing truths in gestures the conscious mind cannot always censor. They reveal affection or avoidance, maturity or fear, possession or protection, empathy or impatience. They are a mirror, showing the shadow and the self alike, sketching the outline of who he is beneath who he pretends to be. To learn to read them is to step out of illusion. It is not about accusation, but about awakening, about meeting love as it is rather than as it is promised. For a woman who sees with this clarity no longer begs for confirmation. She does not ask, "Do you love me?" She knows. She knows because she has watched the coffee cup passed with tenderness, the hand resting unconsciously on hers, the palm open even in anger, the fingers exploring as if in awe, the tools lifted to repair her world. She has read the text written without ink, the confession etched in skin and bone. In that knowing lies freedom. Freedom from the hunger for endless reassurance, freedom from the ache of doubt. When you understand the language of hands, you anchor yourself in reality rather than rhetoric. You step into the wholeness Jung described, not the fantasy of perfect love, but the clarity of authentic connection. And from that clarity comes strength, the strength to stay when the gestures reveal devotion, and the strength to walk away when they do not. For no woman who sees the truth clearly remains a victim of half-love. She becomes instead the keeper of truth, luminous in her discernment. And what of those rare, predestined meetings that seem arranged by fate itself? Jung would tell us they are not chance but synchronicity, the collective unconscious weaving its threads. When such a connection arrives, it often does so with unmistakable resonance. You feel drawn not by appearance or charm, but by a deeper recognition, as if some part of you long asleep has stirred. These connections rarely come easy. They summon shadows as well as light, forcing both to the surface. The destined partner is not only mirror of beauty, but also mirror of wounds. Yet in this confrontation lies growth, the painful but necessary integration of the hidden self. Hands again become witnesses. Here they tremble as fear rises. They soothe when courage prevails. They create when love insists on embodiment. Two lives intertwine not in words alone, but in gestures that repeat across time, meeting, holding, repairing, guiding. Fate writes its signature in synchronicities, but it seals the bond in touch. If you look back, you may notice how such connections weave through uncanny coincidences, paths that almost crossed years before. Dreams echoing each other's symbols, thoughts that leap silently across distance. These are not random, but reminders. They are the universe whispering, you are on the right path. The meaning of these encounters is not possession, but transformation. They awaken gifts, summon courage, and make space for becoming. Sometimes, it is not the dramatic declarations that shape us most, but the simplest moments, the touch that lingers, the hand that steadies. Through them, the soul says, here is love, not as fantasy, but as fact. So do not underestimate the ordinary. Do not dismiss the silent. Look to the hands, for they are both anchor and compass. They show where a man's energy flows, where his soul opens, where his shadow hides, and in seeing them, you step closer to your own wholeness. For the journey is never just about discovering his truth. It is about discovering yours the strength to see clearly, to stay grounded in reality, to embrace love when it is true and to release it when it is not. If these reflections moved you, take a moment to share them. Like this video, subscribe for more, and let your thoughts unfold in the comments below. Your voice may be the mirror someone else needs today.